so often. People want to live as close to the beach as possible. So when I have people call me up, they go, maybe I really can't afford it, but can we just talk about it a little bit? And so I do that. We go down that road. And in particular, Siesta Key Beach, people are very much interested in that because of its reputation as being one of the #1 beach in America. It's so gorgeous there. And so I get questions of, how much will it really cost? What kind of property can I get for the money? How close can I really get? So in this video, I want to cover all of that and a little bit more. Hi, I'm Jill Thomas, and each week I bring new videos and fresh content about what it's like to live here in the Sunshine State, and then dig down a little deeper, to cover the Sarasota area right here. And then of course, talk about real estate, mix it all together to help you understand what it's like to be here or to purchase a property or sell one. So if that has been on your radar, then this just might be the channel for you. So be sure to tap that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and of course, most importantly, keep watching videos so you can be better educated. And then when you're ready to take the next step, then please give me a call, text or email me. I'm happy to answer all of your questions. Number 1, condos on Siesta Key. So to start with, we're going to talk about condos that are directly on the key, meaning we're not on the mainland, you have to go over a bridge to get to it. But there's two types of condos once you're out there. The kind that are directly on the beach, that may or may not have a view because you're just on the Gulf side where you walk out your door and you just as if steps to the beach, or those condos that aren't on the beach. Now, if you're not on the beach, it could be that there's no water at all around you, or it could be that you're on the bay or the intercoastal waterway. And sometimes those properties actually have docks for those condominiums. So that's kind of cool too if you're a boater. And then you could still be on the Gulf, but there's no beach access. There's what we call a seawall there. So if you get to the edge of the land and you look down to the water, it's just a wall there. There's no sand or anything right there on the Gulf side. So I say all that to say that all waterfront condos are not created equal. Now, if you're not directly on the beach, sometimes those condominiums will have deed to beach access. Maybe you have to walk across Midnight Pass Road, or it's a short distance to walk somewhere to get to the beach that you're permitted to use. But sometimes you don't, and you would actually have to go to a public beach access point or the main public beach area to get your toes in the sand. And so sometimes those things are a little bit farther away than what people think. So just because you're on the beach or on the key does not necessarily mean that you're right there on the beach. So there's all those different things. So not all these waterfront condos are created equal. Now let's talk about pricing a little bit. With these condominiums, just to keep it simple, I'm just focusing on your basic, like kind of 2-bedroom, 2-bath type of condominium or greater. There are some 1-bedroom condos out there. They're very small. And of course, you can get those for less money than the numbers I'm going to use. Now, first, let's talk about those 2-bedroom condos that are on the beach, on the Gulf side. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean, like I said before, that they have a view or anything like that, because that distance between Midnight Pass Road, that main drag, and where the sand actually, or the water actually starts, it can be a little deep. And so some of those properties, if they're little villas, they're closer to Midnight Pass Road, they're not going to have views. Or even if it's a tower, depending on where the unit's at, there's not going to necessarily be a water view. It might be a nice view, but it won't necessarily be a water view. So the views will vary totally, but just to be very close to the water where you can be on the beach, that's what we're talking about. So at the low end right now, in the last 60 days or so, we're talking at least $700,000. So those would be the units without much of a view, may even need some updating. To get a view, you're definitely looking over $1 million for a property right now. And again, depending on the size of the unit and the quality of the view, for over $1 million or even $1.5 million, that unit may or may not even be updated. So there's a lot of other factors involved, but just to keep it simple, we're talking a minimum of $700,000. Now, to get a 2-bedroom condo that's right there on the key, so you're still really close. It's not like you have to go over a big bridge in order to get to the beach, but not on the beach itself. So again, you could be a garden view where you're not, like, there's no water access at all. You could be on a canal or the bay or the intercoastal or on the Gulf with the seawall. At a minimum, we're talking $400,000. But for that $400,000 property, it's going to be very small. It's going to be under 1,000 square feet and need some work. And so again, to get something super substantial with a nice view, we're talking $1 million or more. So of course, there's a lot of things happening between that $400,000 price point and $1 million. It's not like it's just one or the other. But again, just to give you guys a rough idea of what we're talking about, because sometimes people have these visions of waking up and looking at water from their bedroom and going out to a balcony and drinking a cup of coffee and being able to get something for $500,000 or $600,000. In today's market, it's definitely going to cost you over $1 million for that. And then, of course, with condominiums, we have to talk about those association dues, those condo dues. And at the very low end, there's a few associations where the dues are like in the $500 per month. But those are a little bit fewer and farther between. They definitely are more $700, $800 a month, $900, and some of them are over $1,000 a month. So those carrying costs start to get a little high. And of course, we have taxes on top of all that, which that's a conversation for another day. And one other thing I want to point out with condominiums out there on Siesta Key is a lot of them are older, built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So we're talking lower ceilings, just different types of floor plans. There are a lot of condos, or not a lot, but there's a handful, a few that were built like in the 90s and in the 2000s. So you're gonna have higher ceilings, a little bit more of an open floor plan, something a little bit more modern, but still a lot of those buildings are a lot older. So keep that in mind as well. Number 2, homes on Siesta Key. So now let's talk about the single family homes that are directly on the key. Just like with condominiums, the water access or water views are going to vary greatly. Most of the homes are actually garden homes, meaning they just back up to another house. There's no water view and there's no direct water access. And then from there, you have homes on canals. And then you could have a home on the bay or the intercoastal, or sometimes we'll call them a bayou. And then, of course, there's a handful of homes that are directly on the beach. There's not quite as many of those either. Now, Siesta Key kind of is an odd shape. It sort of starts off a little thin, then it gets wide, and then it gets very thin again. Now, the section where it's wider, the interior of all that are going to be primarily homes. A lot of the condominiums are more on the West Coast, but the interior are going to be a lot of single family homes that may or may not be on a canal. So I say all that to say, even though you're on the key, it doesn't mean that you're super close to the water like you are with a lot of the condominiums. It doesn't mean that you couldn't maybe walk or bike to the beach comfortably, but just keep in mind, it's not like it's just right there, a couple steps or a half a block away from your house. It could be, but a lot of them aren't. Okay, so now let's talk about how much it would cost to have a house on Siesta Key. Something without a view, a garden home at the low end is about $1 million right now. You might still get something in the 900s a little bit, like a 950 or so. And these homes, like I said, no view. You might have a really pleasant backyard. You may or may not have a swimming pool. And a lot of these homes are going to be older, probably no sooner than the 80s, unless it's a smaller house. Of course, there's an exception to everything, but 80s, 70s, 60s. So an older home probably will need a little bit of work, but at a minimum, I'd say to get a house on Siesta Key right now is going to cost you an easy $1 million. All right, then to get a house on a canal, it's going to cost starting around $1.5 million. Now, not all canal properties are created equal so besides the house, the condition of the house, the land, the lot size, that kind of stuff, that's one type of thing that we look at to figure out value, but then also the canal itself can really make a difference because some canals are really narrow. So when you look out that back door, you might be, your neighbor's backyard might be really close to you because that canal is so narrow. So if it's wider, then there's greater value with that. If you're able to have a dock there, a boat dock, and the different types and sizes of boats that you might be able to have right there in that section of the canal will make a difference and add value. How much frontage you have on the canal. I sold a house on Siesta Key. It's been quite a while. It was on a cul-de-sac and it was a beautiful pie-shaped lot. And oh my goodness, they had so much frontage on the canal the way the lot was. I mean, it was almost like 180 degrees from their backyard. And so it was awesome. It was a great, great view. So of course, that carries a lot more value than, if you only have, let's say, 100 feet across on a canal or 80 feet or something like that. So that makes a huge difference in value. The depth of the canal, and then honestly, how close you are to open water, because once you get in that boat, how long is it going to take you to get out to the bay, get you out to the Gulf? So that makes a difference too. And then how many bridges you have to clear to get there. And some of those bridges can be a little bit low. So that will also determine the size of boat you can have. So there's a lot to think about when it comes to canals. It's just not like, oh, we're on a canal and this is, beautiful. There's so much you have to think about as well with that. So that's why the prices of those canal homes really vary, but at the very low end, $1.5 million. Now to get a house on more open water, whether it's the bay or the intercoastal, a bayou, or even the beach. Again, of course, it depends on the size, the condition of the home, kind of like with the canal as well. How much frontage do you have? There's a lot that goes into that. But in the last 60 days, at the low end, to get a house directly on water, we're looking at about $5 million. Now, if the house is a candidate for a tear down and it's just in really poor shape, you might be able to get the property for a lot less because you're buying it for land value. And the anticipation is you're going to take down the home and build something new. So you could definitely maybe see something for less money, but right now, pretty easy, about 5 million, maybe a little bit less, or if depending on how the market shifts, it could be more. So that's what you're looking at for getting something on more open water right now in Siesta Key. Now I want to share with you a few differences between having a condo and having a house on Siesta Key, just to clarify some things, because again, I get these similar questions quite often. And so I want to share this information with you because I think it's really, really important. First of all, flood zone. So when you're out there on the water like that, let's assume that every property is in a flood zone. So if you have a single family home that's in a flood zone and you have a mortgage on it, you are required to carry flood insurance. Now, if you pay cash for something, you don't have to have flood insurance, although I think it would be wise to do it, but sometimes people are self-insured. Now, if you're in a condominium, especially if you're in a high rise or mid rise and your unit isn't directly on the ground, then you wouldn't have to have flood insurance for your specific unit. Typically what happens is the association carries that flood insurance for the common areas, which is what's going to be on the ground level. That's where the office is going to be, maybe a fitness center or something like that. That's going to be down there on the ground level. And so that's going to be part of your association dues. And that's why they tend to be a little bit higher out there as well, is to help cover for that flood insurance for the common areas. Now, if you're in a villa on the ground, then I think in that case, you're going to need to have your own flood insurance because that's your personal property. But if you're up higher, so that's a little bit of a difference there, is that flood insurance between having a house or being in a condo. And then one other thing is rental restrictions. There is a big difference in rental restrictions out there on Siesta Key. Now, if you're in a condominium, it's going to vary from association to association. But generally speaking, Siesta Key is the area with the most liberal rental restrictions for condominiums, meaning you could do a lot of short-term rentals. Sometimes some of the properties will allow 2 or 3 night minimum or 1 week minimum, 2 week minimum. So that's really nice that you've got that option to rent out the property a lot. Now, it's considered more of a condo hotel in that case, and there's some other things involved with that. Sometimes it's harder to get a loan for a property like that, but you can get really great rental income. The single family homes, though, that's another story. Most of Siesta Key is in the county limits, not the city limits, in which case the best you can do is rent out your house for a minimum of 1 month at a time. You cannot do a lot of short-term rentals. The very northern section of Siesta Key, where it's not directly on the beach, that's in the city limits where you're permitted 1 week minimum. So sometimes people think, well, it's kind of a resort area, I should be allowed to rent my property out pretty easy peasy. But you cannot do it. It's a 1 month minimum for almost all of Siesta Key. So that's a huge thing to keep in mind when you're talking about investing in a property like that. So I wanted to share those 2 main things with you. Number 3, condos on the mainland. So now let's get off the Key. There's 2 bridges to get to Siesta Key. There's the North Bridge and the South Bridge. We're gonna go over to the mainland because of course prices drop significantly once you get off the Key there. Now what I did is, again, we're just looking at 2-bedroom properties or greater. And I went out about 4 miles as the crow flies from Siesta Key Beach itself. And of course, it's one thing to get from your property to the bridge to go out to the beach, and then another thing to go from the bridge to the beach itself because of traffic. Just the roads are kind of windy sometimes, and you have to drive a little bit slower. So even though the mileage isn't very great, sometimes it takes a little bit longer than what people think to do that. So that's why, I only really went a couple miles inland to work on these numbers. So again, these 2-bedroom condos. So at the low end, you can actually get a condo pretty close to the beach for under $300,000 right now. But Keep in mind, these are going to be pretty small places, typically under 1,000 square feet. Again, might need some work. They're going to be an older property, and a lot of them are going to be 55 plus communities because those prices for the 55 plus communities run a little bit lower than those places where there are no age restrictions, just because you're limiting your buyer pool a little bit there with that. So a little bit below 300 and into the 300s, you can certainly do that. Now, somewhere in the middle there, the average price for a condo like that is going to be, in the 400s or so. Again, size and location and any type of little view you might have, because of course we're not on the water at this point, whether it's a cute little garden view or something sort of pleasant, that will vary. But certainly, you can get something in the 400s and then into the 5s. And then at the high end, of course, we always have places that are going to exceed the $1 million mark, but you can get something really quite fabulous, like in the $600,000-$700,000 range. If you want something just really nice and lovely and closer to the beach, that's what you're looking at, is that $600,000-$700,000 price point. Number 4, homes on the mainland. So as you can expect, the numbers are going to jump between a condo and a house to be there on the mainland. And again, I use the same parameters, the same distance out, at least 2 bedroom, 2 bath. Now at the low end, you can still get a house around the $300,000-$400,000 mark. But before you call me and say, okay, Jill, I want one of those homes, you've got to keep in mind, these homes are going to be very old and in very poor shape. In fact, it might even be to the point where you can't get homeowners insurance on it because of the age of the roof, or maybe the electric panel or something like that. So these are definitely project homes. These are not something that's going to be super move-in ready or anything like that. So before you get super excited about that, you got to think through how much of a project are you willing to take on. Then the average price of homes that are relatively close to Siesta Key. So from the last 60 months, the median sale price is about $650,000. And so that's not too bad there. Now keep in mind, with these types of homes, a lot of these homes are still going to be a bit older. And what I do like about them is they're usually loaded with a lot of character. There's some neat things about them. They should be kind of updated a bit, not a hot mess or anything like that. There might be some things you'd still want to change for sure. But on average, the median sale price right there is $650,000. Okay, now let's talk about the high end. In the last 60 days, there were like 15 homes sold between $1 million and $3.5 million. And these homes, some of them still kind of older, but super charming, like really in nice shape, a lot of character. Some of them may even be on water, whether it's a canal or even on the other side of the bay or the intercoastal, and you're looking over to Siesta Key from those homes. And so that's kind of neat too. So you can definitely still find some really fabulous homes and significant luxury properties around $1 million, $3.5 million right now that are relatively close to Siesta Key. And I'm sure there's other properties out there too that go way above that, but I was just looking at the numbers from the last 60 to 90 days is what I was trying to stick with. Okay, well, to wrap this up, I hope this really helps you to get an idea of what is out there if you do truly want to be closer to the water. Now, we've got other homes in similar price points to all this, $600,000-$700,000 that are really fabulous, but they're much farther east. And so you're going to get away from those beaches and you're not going to be as close. So was it what you thought? Did you think maybe it should be more affordable, or were you not surprised by the numbers? Let me know. You can throw that in the comments below. And if you want to talk more about what it would take for you to be able to be closer to Siesta Key, then give me a call, or really any of the other beaches, because of course we've got quite a few, as I already mentioned. So I hope this was a help to you and a nice education. I appreciate you guys watching, especially for those of you who are still watching. You're here all the way to the end. That's fantastic. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.